Welcome back to ROXY'S Music Store's presentation of the operational and feature differences between an acoustic and a Roland V-Accordion. An operational characteristic of all acoustic accordions is the fact that the air resistance of the bellows is not always constant. It depends on the number of notes pressed. If I try to pull on the bellows without pressing any notes, even if I apply considerable force, the bellows does not expand very readily. You see, it's stuck. The reason is because without any notes pressed, all the reed valves are shut, and there's no way for air to enter into the bellows system. This characteristic of acoustic accordions has been used for years to verify if the instrument has any air leaks. An acoustic accordion having a high bellows air resistance when no notes are pressed, like this one, is considered good. If I press a note, the reed valve of that note opens up a route for air to enter into the bellows system, and I can begin to pull the bellows out and push it back in more easily. The more notes I press simultaneously, the easier it is for me to expand and contract the bellows. The reason it gets easier is because the more notes I press, the more reed valves are simultaneously open, providing more routes for air to enter and leave the bellows system. Eventually, when maintaining chords on both the bass and treble sides, the bellows expands almost effortlessly. But here's the thing. Each reed requires a certain amount of air to maintain a desired dynamic level of sound in the room. The more reed valves that are open, the more air I need to push through the bellows system, and I do that by pulling and pushing the bellows at a faster rate. The same thing happens if I select different reed combinations using the register switches, since doing so changes the number of reeds that are in use. As a side note, although you saw me moving the bellows at a faster rate as I played more notes simultaneously, the force that I applied as I pulled and pushed was actually approximately the same in each case. You see, it was not me applying more force that caused the bellows to move more quickly. It was the instrument lowering its air resistance as more and more open valves provided escape routes for the air. With the resistance lowered, the same force applied by me caused the bellows to move at a faster rate. In contrast, on a V-accordion, the air resistance of the bellows is determined only by the setting of the air release valve, which I notice in my FR1X user manual is officially called a bellows resistance regulator. On a V-accordion, there is no change in air resistance as I press different numbers of notes simultaneously, or as I make different reed selections with the register buttons on either the treble or the bass side. Since in each case I am applying the same force in order to maintain the same dynamic sound level in the room, and since in each case the air resistance remains constant, the rate of expansion and contraction of the bellows also remains constant. So yes, as you saw in part 1 of this video presentation, I can adjust my V-accordion such that the strength required to play it is approximately equal to that of an acoustic. But the playing experience is not exactly the same, is it? On an acoustic, the rate of expansion and contraction varies in accordance with the number of notes played. On a V-accordion, the rate is constant, determined only by the setting of the bellows resistance regulator. So, what difference does this make to the playing experience on each type of instrument? Well, on an acoustic, the requirement of changing the rate of expansion and contraction of the bellows in accordance with the number of notes being played and the selected reed combination makes that instrument more challenging to play, and more practice work is required to perfect the skill of good dynamic expression. I have great admiration for those accordionists who can do it well. And it is my observation that those accordionists who do it the best have had many years' experience on the instrument. Although these advanced accordionists make it seem so simple, at my playing level, constantly having to adjust the rate of expansion and contraction of the bellows for good dynamic expression is a challenging skill to perfect. Another resulting difference in playing experience is that when I play on an acoustic, I often have less bellows range, and as a result, I'm more prone to run out of air. As a consequence, I must pay closer attention to my bellows strategy. Watch as I play a simple practice piece on my honer. In that performance, I was playing in 3/4 time, 4 measures for each direction of the bellows. But did you notice how before starting, I had to open the bellows considerably? The reason is that in the last measure, I sustained the bass note and chord buttons, thus opening more reeds, thus requiring me to close the bellows at a faster rate at the end in order to maintain the desired dynamic level. If I had not given myself a little extra room at the beginning, I would have run out of air. Of course, this was a simple example, but it demonstrates the point quite well. On a V-accordion, I don't have to worry so much about running out of air as a consequence of sustaining bass buttons. I don't have to do any special preparation, like setting up the bellows position before I start playing. Indeed, on a V-accordion, the air release adjustment can be used to give me more bellows range if I desire it. Let me demonstrate by closing the air release valve completely. There you go. I've played the entire piece at the same dynamic level as before without even changing the bellows direction. And it's still less than half open. Remember, when I change the air resistance setting, it does not change the actual strength that I need to pull to produce the desired dynamic level in the room. It's the volume control and bellows curve settings that determines that. The air resistance setting changes only the rate at which the bellows expands. An important concept that good teachers try to impart to their students is musical phrasing. I don't have time here for a complete explanation. Suffice it to say that ideally I should play complete phrases without changing direction of the bellows, if possible. Well, as you have seen, on my acoustics, such a feat could be quite challenging, even if the phrases are 4 measures each, especially if I'm required at the same time to use sustained bass chords. Let me demonstrate with a popular example from level 1 of the famous Palmer Hughes accordion course, played first on my V-accordion and then a second time on my honer. Do you see the challenge? Whereas the piece was relatively easy to accomplish on the V-accordion, I had to stretch out the bellows on the honer almost to the limit. In the lesson, they advised the student to use a single reed combination, clarinet, on the treble side, and they even suggest to play only bass note buttons without chords on the bass side, thus reducing the number of open reeds and required airflow. But to make the point more obvious, I left the reed selections on master on both bass and treble sides. The fact of the matter is, using a V-accordion, it isn't necessary to limit the number of reeds that I use in order to accommodate my instrument's limited ability to handle the required airflow. And to make the demonstration even more fair, I adjusted the air regulator control on my V-accordion such that the strength required to play was equivalent to that on the honer. These demonstrations show that even at the level of a beginning accordion student, with its adjustable features, a Roland V-accordion is noticeably easier to play than an acoustic. And if this is true at a beginning student level, it is true at all levels. Of course, you may still prefer an acoustic for many reasons. As I said in the beginning of this presentation series, I'm not here to challenge anyone's personal preference for one type of instrument over the other. I'm here only to present the facts. And the fact is, depending on the number of notes played and reed combination used, on an acoustic, the bellows resistance changes, and the bellows range can become more limited. Whereas on a V-accordion, the bellows resistance remains constant, and the bellows range is far greater. In the next part of this presentation series, I will demonstrate the greater variety of sounds that you get on a V-accordion compared to an acoustic. Stay tuned.